so today we're going to be talking about Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. Daphne du Maurier is easily one of my favorite authors. I think every single book I read by her, I become more and more obsessed with her. So this is going to be, it's going to start as a spoiler-free video briefly, then I'm going to dive into spoilers, and then I'll give my final thoughts at the end. So if you're specifically only here for spoiler-free thoughts, check the description for time jumps so that you can skip the spoiler section. But we're gonna start with a spoiler-free description, I'm leaving that in, of Jamaica Inn. Okay, Jamaica Inn is a classic, it's labeled suspense, romantic suspense. Man, I'm articulate today. It's labeled a classic romantic suspense. I will note that classic suspense, classic thriller, classic horror, they are different from modern versions of these genres. So the suspense comes more in du Maurier's writing and less in high stakes situations. So it does a great job, but go into it, if you haven't read a lot of classic suspense, go into it knowing that it's going to read a little bit differently. So the general premise of this book is our main character, Mary, who is 23, pretty sure, and has lived with her mom her whole life and lived a pretty comfortable, good life. And then her mom passes away, so she goes to live with her aunt in a very not comfortable place. Her uncle works at, or owns, an inn that's known by everyone in town to be a place where you don't go. It's a place where shady things happen, and this young, naive, pretty girl probably isn't gonna be safe there. But she is determined to go stay with her aunt, and when she gets there, she finds that her aunt is not the same as she once was. She is run down, she is a demoralized version of herself, and this inn that she's at is in fact shady. Oh, and her uncle is a creep. In fact, this whole town is a creep. The whole town is a creep. It's an entity. It's a living entity. No, I'm just kidding. This whole town is full of shady, creepy people. It is not a good place to be. It is not where our protagonist Mary needs to be, especially as young and naive as she is. But she stays for the sake of loyalty to her aunt, and in the process also meets the handsome, charming, not cool guy, the love interest. And there's a romance too, because, it's in the description. I loved this book more than I can tell you. I loved this book. Oh my goodness. Du Maurier has this signature writing style where she can write creepy, unsettling environments that I feel deep within my bones. She wrote this very unforgiving, very uncomfortable town so well. She wrote this uncle so repulsively that I would physically recoil away from him as I was reading. She can write feelings, she can write an environment that causes me to physically react in a way unlike any other author I've read. And I would read any book by du Maurier just for her ability to write. Not only is her prose beautiful, but her ability to write an immersive environment is untouchable. The romance in this book is a typical young, naive, classic sort of heroine matched with a bad boy type. And I think that du Maurier did so well with this as well. I'll go more into it in the spoiler section, but this is a trope that I don't like. I don't enjoy reading a bad boy. I don't enjoy anything about this trope, but this is an example of, like, in my video, Books I'm a Hypocrite About, one point that I made is that, there's nothing wrong with liking a trope or a writing technique, something, anything, in one book, and then another book playing on those same tropes and not liking it there, because every author is going to execute it differently and different readers are going to connect with different authors' executions, right? This is the perfect example of this, because I don't think I've ever enjoyed the bad boy trope, but du Maurier has proved to me that it can be written so well, and while I have no feelings toward the love interest that are positive, and I would never look at him twice were I Mary. She convinced me. I have just now decided I'm going to bleep out the name of the person, even though I don't think it's necessary, just for the sake of anybody who super doesn't want any kind of extra information. Also, I adore our main character, Mary. Du Maurier took a classic standard protagonist, female protagonist in this sort of setting, in this sort of gothic setting. The young, naive girl going to a new area that's darker, that's more creepy. She took this, but she made Mary fit this archetype and yet be so strong in such unique ways. I do have things that I could whine about in this book, and I'll get into that in the spoilers, but that's my spoiler-free thoughts. Skip to the final thoughts if you don't want spoilers. But if you want spoilers, let's hang out for a minute. I've kind of already touched on the environment about as far as I probably need to, especially if you've read it, and I'm very aware that Du Maurier is not the writer for everybody, and it's totally cool if anybody watching this read this book and then didn't fall for it. I get it. But I did. Du Maurier is just one of the most skillful writers I've ever read. And every single book that I read by her, I'm more and more impressed by her and more in love with what she writes. As I mentioned in the spoiler-free section, the environment, her writing, her ability to create feelings and reactions from the reader in such organic and natural ways is just untouchable. It's just incredible. On top of that, I want to go into the romance a little bit more because, as I said in the spoiler-free section, I hate this trope, but Du Maurier did it so well. So as I said, Jem is not someone that, were I in Mary's situation, I would even look twice at. There were so many lines by this man that were so horrible, and he would say them and I'm just like, you are the biggest jerk ever. But I think that Du Maurier did a great job of creating this very rough around the edges, very unabashedly rude man, while also showing us why Mary would fall for him. Mary is constantly making this comparison between Jem and Joss. Yeah, her uncle Joss. She's constantly making this comparison between her love interest and her creepy, disgusting, nasty uncle. And she does a great job of making Mary self-aware of seeing that Jem has so many of Joss's negative qualities, yet Jem also is handsome and charming and clearly very good at flirting with her. And she does such a great job of showing that to the readers so that it feels like, at least for me while I was reading it, it felt like I totally, even though I'm not falling for Jem, I see why Mary does. She brings up that Jem is a younger, more handsome version of Joss, and she even has a line at some point in her head thinking about how she understands how her aunt would have gotten into such trouble with a younger version of her uncle if this is what he was like, which is a very self-aware thing of realizing, yeah, he's probably a really bad choice for me, yet she kind of says, oh well, I'm in love. Because Jem also has some good qualities that Joss doesn't have. He's very charming and very smooth. I think a great example of that is in the scene where Jem is selling back a horse that he stole from someone. He's selling it back to that person. And the way he handles that situation, the humor of that situation is beautiful. And then whenever Jem runs away and she runs with him, she chases discreetly behind him. And then they meet up and they're laughing together. It's such a great example of how smooth he is and how charming he can be if he feels like it. There's also scenes where he's flirting with her, where he wants to kiss her, where he buys her that scarf and headscarf, and then but the way he does it is so, it's not like I bought this for you, love me. It's very almost standoffish, like I had some extra money, I bought you this, here, take it. And telling her that he'll buy her a ring and he'll marry her if that's what will make her feel like an honorable woman. He just wants to be with her, even though he couldn't care less about these things. And he still has that terrible, terrible stuff in him every time, even if he's trying to charm her. Like when she says, how many wives do you have, Jem? And he's like, 7 or 8, but I've actually stopped counting. And it's just like, you're the worst. But his attentions are also hyper fixated on her, and he's not a complete bag of garbage. He's like a half bag of garbage. And in Mary's situation, where she's surrounded by horrible people who want to take advantage of her, who want to cause her harm, who want to hurt, just anything, they want to take advantage of her, right? She's surrounded by so many people who are the worst, and Jem is like half of the worst. So I understand why this naive young woman in this terrible situation would latch on to the one person that's kind of, sort of, maybe a quarter decent. I can't even say half decent. Especially coupled with his looks and his charm. Again, I feel no attachment to this man. He would not win me over with his charm. He would not win me over with, I'll buy you a ring and get married to you if it'll make you feel honorable. I've done it to these other women, so sure, why not? Which I think he was joking with that answer. But there's so many things that he says and does that just repulse me about him. But at the same time, she does a good job of showing two sides of him and helping me to understand why Mary would fall for him, even if I never did. Plus, I have to wonder, if Mary weren't in such a desperate situation and she met Jem under other circumstances, would she still fall for him, or would the bad be much more prominent if she weren't surrounded by so much greater evil in her life? And I think that's a really interesting thing to speculate on. I also want to talk about Mary because I love Mary. I love her so much. Like I said in the spoiler-free part of this video, she is kind of a standard archetype for this type of story. This very young, naive girl who's been whisked away into a much darker, more ominous situation. But du Maurier did such a great job of making her so uniquely her. She starts out with this intense loyalty to her aunt, to her detriment, where she decides to do stupid things in order to respect her aunt's wishes of not revealing who her uncle is and what he's doing and stuff like that. But as the story progresses and as she becomes more aware of the situation she's in and how truly dark these people are, she goes from this sort of doe-eyed, hopeful, expecting goodness in everyone type of character to being much more aware of her situation and eventually putting her foot down and standing up to her aunt and saying, you know what? No, this is terrible. We're in a horrible situation here and you need to get with it, and I'm going to do what I need to do. I need to do what's best for us, not what you're asking me to do. So she has this great arc emotionally, mentally. She has this great arc of becoming more aware and becoming more mature and understanding her environment more, but she also has this amazing strength to her that's totally unique to her. Again, she goes from this doe-eyed girl to actually really fighting back and harming the man who's trying to assault her, and then standing up to her aunt, and then in the end, all this time, all she's wanted is to just go work on a farm. She's constantly saying, I'm not afraid of man's work. She's still feminine. She's still a standard classic woman, but also saying, I want to work on a farm. I want to own my own farm. I don't need a lush life. I don't need to be taken care of by someone. I'll take care of myself. I just need a home that's safe. And at the end of the story, well, I'll get to that. Because now I want to talk about the cons, because I do have some nitpicks, and I do have some whining to do. I've never read a book that is absolutely perfect for me and that I have nothing to say about. And this book falls into that, even though it was so close. It was so close. So I guess first I'll say the mystery wasn't the most thrilling thing of du Maurier's books. It was pretty easy to figure out what was going on long before Mary did. And the big reveal wasn't the most shocking thing in the world, But it was still really fun to watch unfold, so I really wasn't too bothered by that. The thing that I was more bothered by is the final scene. As the whole mystery thing played out and as things were being explained, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that part. But really what I wanted to see Mary and Jem together in the end. I didn't want to see them together. I wanted to see the final scene of them and see how Du Maurier was going to leave us with those two. And I didn't like the way she left us. So if you don't remember, if you read this a while ago, Jem and Mary meet up again, and Mary says, I'm going to go back to my hometown. I'm going to go to a place that's safe and a place that feels like home to me. I'm going to work until I have enough money to buy a farm, and then I'm going to run my farm, and that's going to be my life. And Jem says, well, that doesn't appeal to me at all. I'm not an honorable man. I can't pretend to be one. I'm a horse thief, and I'm gonna go live my rough life in the other direction. And they both invite each other to come with them, and they both say no. And I really loved that because, again, no matter what, they're always honest to their character, and the fact that they wouldn't fit into each other's lives at the end of all this when they're going in other directions, it makes sense. And the fact that they would both stand their ground, and Jem, who clearly loves Mary, still says, no, I'm stubborn and obtuse, and I'm going to do what I want. and I loved that he did that because it was honest for his character, saying, yeah, I'll try out being a reputable man, and I'll go with you. That wouldn't work. So I loved that. But I hated that Mary got on the horse and she went with him. What I wanted out of this ending was I wanted them to both invite each other along to where they're going like they did. I wanted them to both stand their ground like they did. And then I wanted Mary to leave. I wanted Mary to go live out her dream. Mary has already sacrificed so much for the people in her life. I wanted her to do something for herself for once. I wanted her to go follow her dreams this time instead of giving up big chunks of her life for someone else. And she didn't. She went with Jem, who's not even that cool. Which, I mean, I know that she loves him, and I believe that she loves him. Du Maurier built that up very well. But why'd you do it, Mary? I just wanted something to work out for you. I didn't want you to give up a piece of yourself, to give up your dreams, to give up your time for someone else again. I wanted you to go. I wanted them to separate. I wanted them to go their separate ways, and I wanted to leave it on Mary saying, okay, well, when you get tired of that life, come find me. You know where I'll be. And then I wanted to leave it hanging for the reader of wondering, well, did he come back after he left for a year or more? Did he come back to her? Did they end up together? Did they end up settling and finding a balance between them? Or did they not? Did he never come back for her? Did she find someone else and settle down with someone better? And I would have loved for it to end on them parting ways, but with an open invitation, and then just wondering if they ever found their way back to each other or not. I would have appreciated that ending so much more, but I'm not a romantic, and I'm sure the romantics of the world are thrilled that they ended up together. But I'm not. Okay, back to spoiler free. We're gonna talk my final thoughts here. And my final thoughts are, this book is phenomenal. This book is a masterpiece. I think that everything Du Maurier touches is just unbelievable. I have my whines, I have my nitpicks, I have my little things that I would have done slightly differently, but honestly, this book was so close to perfect for me. I'm so impressed with Du Maurier's ability to write characters that are nuanced, yet so layered, even though they're fitting into certain tropes. I'm so impressed with her ability to write environment and for her to make my skin crawl in the way she words things. And I'm so impressed that she was able to take a story that I should have hated, but it's maybe my favorite Du Maurier story I've read yet. I love this author's ability to write for me. It's just perfect for me. So yeah, I had a great time with this book. I highly recommend it. I do think that it might be a book that wouldn't appeal to the wider. I wouldn't necessarily say start with this Du Maurier book because I could see it not working for people, but it worked for me perfectly, even though it shouldn't have. So maybe it is a good place to start. I don't know, but it is very short and it is fantastic. So I highly recommend it. Anyway, I would love to continue chatting with you about this in the comments. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.